Shabbat Shalom. We're all getting ready for Passover, and so I wanted to do my annual talk about eating corn, rice, beans, and lentils on Passover. So, when I was growing up in Tucson, Arizona, my parents belonged to a Reformed synagogue. They were very dedicated Reformed Jews. They went to Shabbat services regularly, were active in the synagogue in Tucson. But they were Reformed Jews, and they were not as meticulous about some things as I later became. So for Passover, we didn't eat any bread. They took all the bread out of the house. But they weren't too concerned about breakfast cereals and other things at home. And so we ate all kinds of things on Passover. It was still a different holiday because some things we didn't eat. But they were not meticulous about everything. And as I grew up later and I studied the laws a little more, I realized that it's a little more complicated than that, just not eating bread. So let me tell you, first of all, what the rules are, and then we'll talk about kitniot, what's called kitniot. So the rule is that you're not supposed to eat chametz. And what is chametz? And you are allowed to eat matzah instead. And what is matzah? And it turns out that the answer to the question, what are the grains that can be chametz, can become leavened, are the same kinds of grains that can be made into matzah, unleavened bread. And only those 5 grains. That's what the Talmud tells us. So what are those 5 grains? They are wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. Now, I have to tell you that the Hebrew terms we're not 100% sure that these are the 5 grains. In fact, many people now question whether oats was in the list because oats didn't grow in Israel at the time, so maybe they didn't know about oats, maybe it was a different grain. But almost everybody agrees that now these are the 5 grains, whether they were the original 5 grains or not. This is what we're calling chametz. And I'm going to repeat the list: wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. Those 5 grains can be made into bread, chametz, but if the dough is kneaded and put in the oven within 18 minutes, and laid out flat, it is considered matzah. That's the difference between matzah and chametz. When the water hits the flour and you knead the dough, roll it out flat, and stick it in the oven, if you can do it in 18 minutes or less, it's considered matzah. If it takes more than 18 minutes, it's considered chametz. So the Talmud then says that only these 5 grains, and they even have a discussion later in the Talmud about a certain Rav Huna who put on his Seder plate 2 cooked dishes. We're supposed to have 2 cooked dishes. What we think now is probably the shank bone and the roasted egg. That's another story. But he used to put, instead of a shank bone and an egg, he put rice and beets. Rice and beets were his 2 cooked dishes on the Seder plate. And his student, Rabbi, was so meticulous that he followed his teacher's teaching precisely, and he also put rice and beets on his Seder plate. That's the way it was back then. Students actually paid attention and listened to their teachers. We don't get that anymore today. But anyway, they did back then. His teacher said rice and beets. He put rice and beets on his Seder plate. And then the Talmud has the following objection. Wait a minute. Didn't this other rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, say that rice should be like the 5 grains? We should add a 6th grain, rice, and not eat rice on Passover because it can become chametz? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said rice should be prohibited on Passover. And the Talmud answers Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, no one, I'll repeat that again, no one follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. That's what the Talmud says. No one follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rice is permissible to eat on Passover. That was the state of Jewish law from the most authoritative text in Jewish tradition of 1,500 years ago. Then came the French and German Jews, Ashkenazic Jews, our ancestors, who decided sometime around 1200 something to start adding to the list of 5 grains. They said, okay, maybe they're not 5 grains, they don't become real chametz, but they're still problematic and we're not going to eat them. And they added rice, and then they added beans, and then they added lentils, and when they discovered the New World, they added corn, and they added peanuts, and they added all kinds of other things. By the way, peanuts have none of the properties that our Ashkenazic ancestors were concerned about. And in fact, there were Orthodox black hat, if you want to call them Orthodox rabbis in Europe at the time when the New World was discovered, who said peanuts are not kitniot. They're not even kitniot. You can eat peanuts. And I remember when I was a kid, and we were not so religious at home, but everybody had kosher for Passover. Maybe you remember this too, some of you. Kosher for Passover, Planters peanut oil. It was actually certified, OUP, Planters peanut oil was kosher for Passover, because peanuts are not even kitniot. But now they are considered kitniot. In any case, our ancestors in France and Germany and so on decided to add to the list of these 5 grains all kinds of other little things. And the word for little in Hebrew is katan, and that gave rise to kitniot, the name kitniot. All these little things that we're not going to eat on Passover also. And there were different reasons given. Maybe some of these grains look like they are becoming leavened. They leaven in a certain way like wheat and barley do. Or maybe you can make them into rice cakes, and somebody will confuse the rice cakes with the wheat cakes. Or maybe they're sitting out in the open-air markets. If been to open-air markets like Machane Yehuda in Jerusalem, and you see the guy who's selling the beans. He's got a barrel of beans, a barrel of lentils, a barrel of rice, and then over here he's got a barrel of wheat and a barrel of barley, and he's got a scooper, and he's scooping and putting it into your sack, right? And some of the wheat will fall into the barley or into the corn while he's scooping. So you actually will have real wheat in the kitniot that you're buying, and that could be a real problem. But in today's manufacturing world, they're completely separate manufacturing plants. These things are not combined. And so that is not an issue. And again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was overruled by every single other rabbi in the Talmud and it was determined that those are not a problem. Now, I have to tell you, I understand if your grandparents and your great-grandparents and their great-grandparents have not been eating these things for centuries, and you feel it's just not Pesach if I'm able to eat rice, there's just something wrong with eating rice on Passover, I get it. We have actually a tradition in our in Jewish law that if you have inherited a custom of your ancestors, out of respect and honor to your ancestors, you will continue to observe this custom. And so if you don't eat these things in your home, that's perfectly fine. But if you find that it's difficult to keep strictly kosher for Passover without eating kitniot, or it's too expensive to buy kosher for Passover food, which is generally very pricey, and you want to have some relatively inexpensive alternatives, then by all means, you can eat kitniot. Our movement determined 30, 40 years ago that in Israel, you could eat kitniot along with the Sephardic Jews there. And about 10 years ago, our movement here in this country also decided that you can eat kitniot on Passover. And truth be told, I have even found a handful of Orthodox rabbis saying, you know what, it's time to get rid of the kitniot ban. There are some Orthodox rabbis out there who also say you can eat kitniot on Passover. Now, if you want some really lenient opinions about what you can eat on Passover, I recommend this website. It's called Ohel Torah. Ohel means tent, O-H-E-L. So Ohel Torah, if you have trouble finding the website, email me, I'll send you the link. It is a Sephardic group of rabbis who have gone through the regular products sold in the supermarket, and they tell their followers all the different things that you can eat on Passover. And it's a shockingly long list of things that you don't need special Passover certification for. I'll just give you one example, Heinz ketchup. I know you think Heinz ketchup, really? Yes, Heinz ketchup, they say, is okay on Passover. You don't need to buy special Heinz ketchup. You can also, I think they even put rice checks and corn checks because in the ingredients, it's only rice and corn. I'm not 100% sure of that. I didn't check this year, but I believe that's the case. So there's a lot of things you can eat on Passover according to this website. The important thing is you're supposed to clean your house of all chametz, those 5 grains, before Passover begins. That's what we do on Thursday. Then Thursday night, we search the house to make sure we haven't missed anything. And we seal up all our chametz in a special cupboard. You're not allowed to have chametz in your possession. Not only are you not allowed to eat it, You're not allowed to have it in your possession on Passover. And so if you don't want to just throw out your pantry of chametz, you don't want to give it away to your neighbors or the food pantry, and you don't want to sell it or whatever, destroy it. What we do is this has been something we've done for hundreds of years. You gather up all the chametz, you put it in a special cabinet, you seal the cabinet, go onto our website sometime this week, before, let's say, Friday morning. Go to the Passover page, and there'll be a sale of chametz page. Go to the sale of chametz page. You authorize Rabbi Strauss to be your agent to sell your chametz during Passover. Rabbi Strauss takes a stack of these authorizations, you authorizing him to be his agent. As agent, he then takes the stack of authorizations, puts a sale of contract page on top of it, which says, I hereby sell the chametz that's represented by this stack of papers to you. And he goes to one of our non-Jewish employees here at Beth Yeshurun, and the contract says, if you accept this contract, you pay $1 down payment now, and you owe $999,999 in 8 days. And if you pay up the rest of the money, you get all this chametz, but you're free to decide not to follow through with the contract if you decide to change your mind. And so he sells the chametz to this person. It's now not your chametz. You're not supposed to touch it. It's not yours. It's in a separate cabinet. At the end of Passover, he goes back to the employee and he says, well, do you want to buy the chametz? And the person says, well, gee, I don't have $999,999 laying around, so I guess I'm not interested. And then Rabbi Strauss says, that's fine, that's not a problem. And he tears up the contract and he gives them the dollar back, right? And now the chametz comes back into your possession. And now you own the chametz again at the end of Passover. And that is something that has been done again for hundreds of years. You can do it again, and I recommend doing that just as a symbolic way of saying, we don't have any chametz in our house at all. But if you want to have rice and beets on your Seder plate, you can follow Rav Huna and be my guest. Anyway, I wish you all a happy, kosher Passover. Chag Sameach.